And we're back! Well, I'm back. Me and my friends just got back from a crazy skiing trip in BC. I'm really stoked to start sharing all the content from the trip, but for now, we're just going to talk about something that I realized while I was on it. I brought pretty much all of my gear on the trip with me, but there was definitely moments where it just wasn't easy to pull out the camera every time I wanted to take a photo, so a lot of the times I was kind of forced to pull out my phone just to snap what I was seeing, and I was surprisingly really impressed with the power of what a phone can do. I haven't really gone to shoot with the phone too much because I have my gear most places I go, but this was a pretty eye-opening experience. I definitely want to start shooting with my phone more and doing more projects based on that. That being said, today we're going to go through my editing process on Adobe Lightroom Mobile, and I'm going to use some of the photos I shot on the trip with my phone. I myself own an iPhone XR. I absolutely love it. The camera quality is insane. I didn't have any accessories for it. I shot with it as it is, just through the camera app and with its built-in camera. No lenses, nothing. And as they say, the best camera is the one you have on you. And honestly, that is really true. So let's start editing. We are now in Adobe Lightroom. First thing we're going to do is, of course, import the photos we're going to be editing. So the first photo we're going to edit today is actually shot by a good friend of mine, Tyler. He also shoots on the iPhone XR, so this is perfect. And this is probably one of the craziest photos from the trip. It's absolutely stunning how the snow just collects on the trees like this up in the mountains. So we're going to go straight into the lighting adjustments, increase the exposure a little bit, bring down the highlights just to bring back some detail in those highlights, bring down the whites a tiny bit, add a little bit of contrast by bringing down the blacks. Perfect. Right away you can see already it's a bit brighter and has a bit more life to it. As you know, a basic S-curve goes a long way, giving a lot of contrast and energy to photos. You don't have to go crazy on it. Even the slightest adjustments will give it more life than it already had. Purpose of this editing breakdown is nothing crazy. I just wanted to show how you can easily take a photo on your phone, edit it within a few minutes, and have it uploaded right away. Brought down the highlights a tiny bit more just because the details in the highlights were being lost a little bit. Now let's go into the color. Something right away that I noticed, it's a bit too cold for me. When we were there, it was sunset and it was a lot more orange in the sky. So what we're gonna do is make it a bit warmer in the temperature and maybe add a tiny bit of purple. Let's go into our mix. And now what I wanna do is really emphasize how much life there was in the sky. So what we're gonna do is bump that saturation pretty much all the way up for the oranges and the yellows, even the reds, because the only parts in this photo that have those colors is the sky, so you're not making anything look crazy weird. For the blues, what we want to do is bring down the luminance a bit, that way you can see the detail in the sky a bit, but as well as bring up the saturation a little bit. There's no greens, there's no purples, there's no pinks, but just for the sake of it, just in case there are a bit in the sky, once again, just bring up that saturation so that I can boost how it actually felt in real life. Bring the sharpening up to about 35, maybe 40, just so that it sharpens the image because it's an iPhone image, but doesn't go too overboard where it starts looking distorted and all weird. Same thing with effects. Adobe just added the feature of texture. It's a really cool feature. It pretty much just brings back texture to any spot that seems a bit soft or blurry. I also, with this, you don't want to push it too far because it could start looking weird, but giving it a bit of life once again. So we're going to go back into the curves and create a basic S-curve for the other RGB colors. Give it some more life. By giving an equal S-curve to all of them, you're essentially balancing out all the colors, so it may seem like nothing actually changed in the image, but it does create more contrast within it. So in this case, I do want to give the snow a little bit more of a purple tint versus a green tint, just because that's how it felt in real life. The sky was so bright and so orange and so pink that it was casting a little bit of a purple cast onto the snow instead of a green. Perfect. Before, after, right away, it gives it a lot more life. But still, something is missing. To me, the shadows are still a bit too dark, so what we're going to do is bring up the shadows actually. Around 40. That will bring out some more details in the shadows. I still think that the sky isn't being represented the way it actually felt in real life. So what we're going to do is add a selective filter. We're going to do a gradient filter, and we're going to drag it from the top down, just essentially where it's hitting the sky. And what we're going to do is go into color, add a little bit of warmth, a little bit of tint, purple tint, and increase the saturation, maybe to like 20. That seems about right. And right away you can tell that there's a lot more life in the sky now. And that's pretty much it for this photo. The purpose of this edit was literally just to push out the colors and to make it seem like the way we saw it in real life, which was absolutely spectacular. The next photo we're going to edit is actually a really special one. It was on the last day of the trip and we just got back from our last run. Beautiful sunset, and we started packing up the car, and I just saw pretty much an empty parking lot with just our car there and the mountains in the background, really tall trees, beautiful sky, and it was just breathtaking. I just had to take a photo. The iPhone photo doesn't do justice of what colors were truly in the skies. So what we're actually going to do in this one is take it a step further and add a few of those colors that are missing that we actually saw in real life, just to give it that true feeling. So same thing as before, like last time, the photo is a bit darker than I want it to be. We're gonna increase the exposure right away, bring down those highlights just to bring back those details, bring up the shadows a little bit, bring down those whites and bring down those blacks for a bit of contrast. Right away, you can see the difference. It's much brighter, has a lot more life to it right away. It felt like we were the only ones in the parking lot, even though there was, I think, 3 or 4 cars left in there. So what we're gonna do is actually go into our healing tool and get rid of those cars. So this one's a little bit more difficult because it's just deep in there and it blends in with everything. So what we're gonna do is take off the feather completely. So 0 feather, and make it a pretty small brush. And one step at a time, just slowly start getting rid of it. At first it's gonna look weird because there's no feather on the mask. Next thing we're going to do is, like I said, it felt like there's more colors in the sky and the mountains were actually purple. So the next thing we're going to do is a radial filter. What you're going to do is add it where the sun is supposed to be. It was right behind those trees, so what I'm doing is I'm adding it right there. I'm going to go into color, add a little bit of warmth, add a little bit of purple in the tint. Right away you can see that it's creating that sunset effect, and what we're going to do is decrease the shadow so that it's less visible in the trees, increase the highlight so it looks like it's piercing through. And what we are actually able to do, if you want, is go into the mask and edit it, get rid of some of that mask in the trees, that way it seems more real. So now it's just a radial filter that's hitting the mountains. So that is better. It's starting to look a bit more like it was in life. However, there was still a lot more tint on those mountains in the highlights. So what we're going to do is add another selective filter, and we're going to start drawing in just where the highlights are on the mountain. All we're going to do is add some purple tint and some warmth to it, and same thing on this peak. And same thing here, we're going to add those purples and those yellows. So basically what we just did is, by adding those selective edits, we added a cast on the highlights of those mountains of the sunset, and that's more or less of how it felt in real life, where everything was pretty cold except the highlights of the mountains were crazy amount of purples and oranges. So now let's go back to the editing process. Picture is still pretty cold, so we're going to add +5 temperature, maybe +2 tint. Let's go into the mix. We definitely want to bring up the saturation of those colors that we just popped. You want to pop the sky a bit more. Let's go to the curves, draw that basic S curve, adds that contrast to pop all those colors and just to bring all these colors to life. Picture is totally different now after the edits. What I would also go in and do after is, because we have subjects, I would want to bring them out. So what I usually do is I do a selective drawing on the jackets and on the faces, and I increase the exposure, bring down the highlights maybe so it's just not too overboard, and same thing with the other person. It just pops them like getting rid of the cars in the background. We've created more separation so you can see them a bit more clearly, and essentially you can just keep going. There's no right or wrong. All you have to do is keep trying, experimenting things until there's nothing left to do. Obviously you never want to push things too far. Like over here, as you can tell, because I didn't do the mask very carefully, it starts bleeding a little bit, and now just overall the picture looks really alive. That's it for today. It wasn't supposed to be a detailed tutorial on how to shoot and edit photos on your phone. It was just a little bit of a breakdown of my photos from the trip. In the future, I definitely want to do a step-by-step process of how I shoot and how I edit photos on my phone. This was just a little bit of an introduction to it. Keep an eye out for it. To not miss the next video, make sure you subscribe and turn on those notifications so you know when it comes out.